Hi everyone. Welcome to Gothenburg Natural History Museum and tonight's event on World Biodiversity Day. We are part of Västarvet and the region of Östergötland, and we get some support from Folkuniversitetet in Gothenburg to do this as well. And this is a collaboration with the Gothenburg Global Biodiversity Centre, the GGBC. And before we start, I actually have a little surprise for Alison and the rest of tonight's speakers. So if you could just come up here and stand up front.
You guys nervous?
Please. I thought that we need to kind of have something to symbolize biodiversity, so I bought you something.
Nice.
Whoa. So if anyone wants to take pictures, you can do that now. This is the perfect time. Because tonight is, of course, about biodiversity and laughs, I think.
Oh, are you having problems with yours?
Thank you for being such good sports. We have Magnus, Alison, Muffin, Magnus, Kennet, Christine, and Harith tonight. So give them a big hand. Okay, you can sit down.
Do we have to leave them on?
Yes. You want to say something about the
I actually kind of like this. It's a good look. It's sort of missing my peripheral vision right now. Maybe I'll go back on between. So, hi, and welcome. I can't really beat that introduction now, but the bar has been set for future events, take note. Yeah, so welcome guys. Today is World Biodiversity Day, and at the Gothenburg Global Biodiversity Centre, we are all about biodiversity. So I'm going to see how many times I can say biodiversity in one short introduction. And Biodiversity Day is something that's been going on for about 25 years now, and it used to be in the middle of December, but then in about 2000 they switched it to May 22nd, because today is the day that the Convention on Biological Diversity was signed, and that's the first piece of legislation that really started making countries around the world do something about biodiversity. It was where people first said, this is something that we need to value and that we need to actually do something about. We need to make sure that it's still here in the future. And so Biodiversity Day was moved to this day. And at our Biodiversity Centre, we've been celebrating this day since we came into existence 3 years ago. The center is a group of 13 different organizations, both at the university and then public partners like the museum, that work with biodiversity in different ways. And we thought that for Biodiversity Day, it would be really fun to show the really ridiculous side of research. So the great thing about these researchers that you will listen to is I think I've been sitting around having a beer with all of them at some point, and the stories that come out are just fantastic. So I thought it would be great to give them a chance to give some of these stories to you guys. So, yes?
I just forgot something again. I always do that, one thing. The candy you got, I don't know if you noticed. Did you look at the candies before you put them in your mouth? Because you have small feet, so that's your ecological footprint. And there are flowers and other things also to represent this day, the World Biodiversity Day. I just wanted to say that.
It's all in the details. All right, so on that note, I would like to invite our first speaker up. We have Christine Bacon, who is an assistant professor at the Department of Biological and Environmental Sciences at the University of Gothenburg. Nope, those are my glasses. I'll take my glasses off. Whoa. Yeah, this is an experience here. So, over the years.
behind the head.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a big braid. Okay.
Put that somewhere safe.
Okay.
This one.
Can you all hear me? Is this working? Okay, so thanks everyone for coming. This is actually quite a few people. Thanks. So as Allison says, I'm Christine Bacon, and I'm a professor at the University of Gothenburg, and I'm passionate about plants. I have been studying palms and palm diversity for over 15 years now. And I've traveled all over South America. I've been to most of countries in South America to find palms in all types of forests. And today I thought I would share a story with you about a crazy new forest type that I discovered in southern Peru. So it's been a few years now that I traveled from Rio, where I was living at the time, you know, the capital of samba and football. And I traveled from that city all the way over to the forests of Peru. And from Peru, from the high city of Cusco, I found myself having crossed huge wetlands, tropical forests, open savannas, high alpine habitats, all types of different forest types. And from that area in Peru, I then went on to spend 4 days on a boat weaving along the Madre de Dios River, which is shown here in this picture. And so I was on a boat with another researcher, a guide, and the boat captain, and it all sounds really serene, right? Floating down the Amazon, you know, beautiful, this really interesting scenery, but actually this boat was a hand-carved canoe with this little engine kind of tied onto the back. You know, this is what they call peque peque. And so that it wasn't very serene at all, because along with this little engine comes this incredibly loud wall of noise that pretty much just made me sick within a few hours. So not only was it incredibly loud on this boat for 4 days, but this boat was actually also uncovered, which is really cool when this huge flock of red and green macaws are flying by to, you know, get nutrients from a clay lick. But I woke up every day completely drenched with the morning dew. And that mixed terribly with the sweat that one accumulates in the hot, scorching sun of Amazonia throughout the day when you're sitting for 4 days in a boat. So there's an even worse part about this uncovered boat that I needed to take to get to these pristine forests of the Cochacashu field station. And that is both the beginning and the end of this story. Rain. Okay. So on the first day of 4 on this boat, it began to rain, uncovered boat, which is totally normal for Amazonian forests, which can receive up to 25 meters of rain a year. But the rain didn't just start, it just didn't stop, right? So it just increased, and we're trapped on this boat, headed down a river to this remote station to collect. And we had to constantly bail out the boat with these teeny little coffee plastic cups that we had from the last town. And it was just a constant bailing of this boat that's uncovered. The river swelled its margins, and the hours washed by in this watery world. So once we arrived at the station, we finally realized the full extent of this rain, okay? The river and the Oxbow Lake that it had formed, this is just the changing of the water course through time. So this Oxbow Lake and the river had basically become one. The floodplain was completely full, and the station had essentially washed away. So although the buildings were on tall stilts to avoid this exact situation, this was next level, okay? So it had become a national emergency. And once we were at the station, we surrounded the little CB radio, and we started getting snippets and how do you say, scratchy, broken up news from the region to understand that this was actually a dangerous situation. We couldn't leave because we didn't have the supplies or the energy to go upstream. And staying, we knew, was going to be really hard. And so, for example, my tent was on a table in a building with stilts for days. I slept in a tent on a table in a building with stilts, okay? There was nowhere to go without getting wet. We literally used the canoe to go between the kitchen and all the other outer buildings. The main issue of this discomfort and just serious danger that we were in was that I had crossed the entire width of South America and put myself through this storm to collect understory palms that were now 3 meters underneath water. Okay, so this is where we get to this new forest type that I found, a drowned one. Okay, so this drowned forest transformed, and about a week after, the water did finally recede. This insane flood left dead animals, sad-looking plants, but the sun did shine in the end, and from this watery world, I ended up finding these little beauties. And although they had lost a whole season of fruits, and many of them were highly damaged, I did get the plants that I had come to find. So these plants that I survived this 100-year flood for serve actually as a basis of a project that I'm still running here at the University of Gothenburg, where when people complain about the rain on days like today, I just smirk to myself and think about the rain that I've seen in the field. So thank you.
Oh, that's me. Okay, Magnus Gelang. I'm from this museum, senior curator here, working on vertebrates, and I'm working on bats and birds. My field work has been mainly in Southeast Asia, and especially Indonesia. I have a photo here, an old one, it's 15 years something. And one can easily wonder how the heck I ended up with like this black lacquer coat, and that's actually a balaclava standing in the Indonesian rainforest. But that story, I saved that for next year, because this must be a tradition, right? So I will not talk about Indonesia, I will talk about China. I will talk about field. Well, everything here is about fieldwork, and fieldwork we quite often bring you into situations that's pretty unpredictable. And in China, I've been in quite a few such. For example, I was in northeast China, actually not collecting birds, but I went there to one specific place to get good photos and good sound recordings of a rare pheasant, Koklas pheasant. It's a global threatened species, threatened by habitat loss. And I stayed in a place, and the people I told the people I stayed with that I'm looking for this pheasant, so I'm back in the evening. I went out, and after one day of pretty unsuccessful fieldwork, I came back with recordings, but no photos. So I was a little bit, okay. They were very happy and very proud, because they could offer me ginger spiced Koklas pheasant in soya sauce. And that was not really what I meant with looking for this pheasant. But, however, other mistakes are longer stories. You have many of you might have heard this. It's a quite famous quotation of a Norwegian polar explorer, Roald Amundsen. He said that adventure is just bad planning. However, sometimes it doesn't matter how much you plan. I did plan a field work in southern China, and I planned for months, maybe half a year or something, with the proper permissions, and I even get satellite photos, satellite maps from S-Range, those space guys in Kiruna. And then I came, and it's a struggle to reach a small town called Jinping in Yunnan, right on the border to Vietnam and Laos. And this is an area famous for the trade, and famous for the trade, not the good trade. It's famous for trade of ivory, trade for the penis bones of tigers, and especially trade of heroin and opium. And when I came there to this mountain, finally, yes, I'm going there, it was blocked. It was totally inaccessible because they had a very big razzia, some heroin razzia. So I had to redo all the plans. A couple of days later, I stood at the foot of another mountain nearby, Huanglianshan, in the same area, and just hoping hope this will be okay. And the police and military, they were really on the edge there, of course, looking for poachers, looking for drug smugglers and so. But it was very, very friendly, very nice. And I spent 6 days hiking, climbing, literally crawling up this mountain. And this is in Yunnan. It was in May. It's heavy rain every day. Between the rain is massive fog, and this makes the forest extraordinary. It's so fantastic. It's warm, it's moist. It's a really great place. But it's quite tough working there. And I reached the summit of the mountain with one aim. I was looking for one specific bird, the target species of the whole trip. Gold's shortwing. It's a small brown bird, of course. It's a relative to our robins, relative to rödhake. I spent days looking for this up there. And finally, I caught a glimpse of it. 2 birds moving away from me. So I had to give up. I was not able to catch it. I didn't even get a photo, anything of it. It's still the first record of that subspecies in China, and as far as I know, the only record. But for no use, really. I went down, and I had my permission, at least everything was set. So I was comfortably taking a ride with a jeep with some guys to the nearest village or town, when I abruptly realized that this permission was not at all a permission to catch birds. Still today, I don't have a clue what I had permission for. I thought it was to catch birds, but apparently not. I ended up in Costa Rica for illegal hunting. And I can promise you that that's not the place you want to end up in Costa Rica. I had some sweaty hours there, really, and I was seriously quite scared. You don't have anyone like to your defense, really. But after a few hours, this misunderstanding was revealed, and in fact, it was the police officer, the head of the police station, that had gave me the permission, whatever it was. So he felt really. He felt that he must do something to apologize for my inconvenience. Or maybe he just took this as an excuse to do something fun, because he commanded all his stuff, the entire stuff, to the station. And then we went out and what do you say? Yeah, we took the nearest restaurant, and we had the most craziest party all night on the house. It was a police station paid for everything. So that the take-home message is that you're not, no matter how you plan, you're not safe. And the take-home message is that Chinese policemen, they are really nice party people. So that's all for me.
I have to ask, have you ever had a translator on one of your field trips?
No.
No?
No.
No need?
No need. Of course not.
All right. Thank you, Magnus. Next we have Muffin. Does this work?
Can you help me?
Yeah, you're good.
Is that okay?
Yeah, you're good.
And I have no safe place to put this, but anyway.
Yeah.
So great stories, and the last one was a great introduction to my story. And I want to say as well that I love doing fieldwork because it definitely gives you the best bragging stories. So I can go and say like all the heroic things that I've done. And I'm going to tell you the story of a particular pair of samples that I collected when I was a PhD student. So I was working with a specific species of ant that only lives inside a specific species of plants. So this is like a very pointy thing that I need to go and find. And if I want to go and find my ants, I need to first find the plant. So the way I usually plan my field work, like I plan it for months as well, but I choose the places to go to first, thinking that I'm going to find whatever I'm looking for. Second, I love going to places that not many people has gone to because I am a very badass female explorer. And third, I go to places where I'm not supposed to go, shame on me, but that's just how I am. So I picked this particular place and I went there and I spent a couple of days looking for the plant. I will walk through the forest and going here and there and I cannot find anything. And I'm like getting super stressed because this is money that's been given to me and I need to finish the PhD and obviously I have all my supervisors on top of me and I cannot find the plant. So I talked to a local person, like one of these guys I know where all things are, and I said like, hey, do you know where I can find this plant? He said like, yes, I can take you to a place that's like 6 hours walking from here, which is fine, like commuting, that's commuting in the field work. I can take you there. It's a super conserved forest. I'm pretty sure you're going to find your plants there, so no problem. Okay, let's go there. So the next day, we meet, and the person says to me, okay, we're ready, but I need to tell you something. Please don't bring rubber boots with you, don't bring cameras, and don't bring GPSs. And this is like the 3 items that you need as a biologist in the field, like that's key. And I'm a good person, so I left the rubber boots on the campsite, I left the GPS, but I took my camera, because that's how I am, again. And we started walking, and the place is beautiful. Like, it's this middle of the mountains, and it's like a little range that connects the Amazonia with the Andean Cordillera. So if you stand there, you see the whole Amazonian basin in the side, and then you see all the Andes on the side. It's really, really beautiful. And we were just following the river. And we were walking very normally, and we reached a wooden house. And then I saw that there was certain people in the wooden house, but I couldn't see exactly what they were. So I just like continued walking, and they started walking towards us. And then I started seeing that the people was dressed in green, which sometimes is normal in Colombia because you have soldiers like traversing the forest, and that's just regular business. It's not a problem. But then I started seeing like their mustaches, and I like realized that they were like very black, thick mustaches, very hairy people. Like, and I thought, this is not how I expect a soldier to look like. And then I realized they had rubber boots. And my experience with doing field work has taught me already that you have like military clothing, and that usually goes with military boots. But if you have civilian clothing, like that goes with rubber boots, right? And the moment you mix military clothing with rubber boots, then you're into trouble, because that's not military, that's obviously guerrillas. So I realized this way too late. I fortunately had time to hide my camera, and I was just pretending that I had no idea what was going on. And they reached us and they introduced themselves, like they said, like, oh, we belong to this, we're this, and we are here for this. And my brain, obviously, the only like logical answer that could come up with to this presentation was, oh, cool, and it's pretty sunny today, right? And they were like, what? But fortunately, the person I was with started making the conversation, because I was not supposed to be there in the first place. So he started saying, no, 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 it's fine. She is my cousin Maria, which is true. But I mean, we're not cousins, but I'm called Maria. And we're visiting our aunt, also called Maria, which is very believable in South America. And we're just going to this particular river. Well, it's just all tourism. And I was like, tourism, sunny, nice clouds, everything's perfect. And they were like, okay, fine, but you can go ahead to the river. You have to come back today. You cannot stay. And on your way back, you have to go by the commander's house to tell them where you are, like what you're doing, like to report yourself. This is already like kind of dodgy, but like we really cannot disagree with them. Like we kind of have to do what they ask us to do. So we continue walking, and it's like 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and I've seen everything but my plant. 4 hours, 5 hours, we're obviously lost. The guy doesn't know where we are. We're like coming across like all kind of things that should not be in the video, but I have not found my plant. And I'm like super stressed. But at the end, like the guy finally finds the path to our destination, and it's this waterfall, and it's probably the best place I've ever been. We were on a super thick forest, like full of plants, and it suddenly opens up to the river, and it's this huge thing. And the wall, you probably cannot appreciate it, but it's full of colors. And then there is in the bottom a lake, and there's folk stories that say that if you swim in the lake, and if you're a loud person, like me, you're gonna drown. And they also drown, like the lagoon swallows the hunters. But like, fortunately, I'm a plant hunter, not an animal hunter, so it was fine for me. And the place was amazing. So we stood there, we had lunch. I'm still not able to find my plant, obviously, because you've already learned that's how it goes with field work. And we have to start walking back home, well, to the town we were staying, to Aunt Maria. And so we walked for the remaining 6 hours, and we got to the commander's house. And the guide goes to the house. I am obviously not allowed to go there, like I am nobody there. And there's just people around, like kind of keeping an eye on me, but they're not very like worried about me. I'm just no one. So I started just walking around and like looking at stuff, like kind of bored, a little bit frustrated. And I'm seeing this plant here, and I can see this plant here, and I can finally see my plants in the most inconvenient place and moment of my entire life, but I need to collect them, right? Because this is my PhD, this is my research, I need to get them. So what I do is just like, I usually use a bag in front of me, just like a traditional Colombian bag. And I very slowly organize plastic bags inside of it. Like my plan was just to take one of those bags, one by one, and just put them in, like on top of a plant, cut quickly the plant so the ants stay in the plant still, and then close very quickly the bag. So I just go like, put it on the plant and just put the plant in my backpack. And like once, twice, 3 times, like 5 plants I collected with this. I don't have photos of the plants because I obviously couldn't take photos at the exact same places, but I managed to get the ants and the plants. And fortunately for me, the guide came down at the exact moment saying like we were okay to leave. And I was like, yes, we're okay to leave. We need to leave. Very nice to meet you guys, but I really have to go home. And we managed to go back to the town. I obviously didn't see my Aunt Maria, and I left the place the next day. But I was very fortunate and very happy to get the samples. And I have to say, don't do this at home. And yeah, the only problem was that I had to stare at Google Earth for weeks trying to figure out what the geographical coordinates were for the samples, but I managed to do it. And by the way, I also sat in a bullet ant that day, so it was like full of adventures.
Thank you, Muffin. All right. Next up, we have Kennet. No. Yep. Going from the Amazon to underwater.
Okay.
You know how to do this?
This is like an intelligence test all the time. Yeah. First attempt. Well, oh, no, I've been practicing before. I got this bag here. Well, it's storyteller's night. I got this stuff. And we need a candle, of course. Yes, yes, we got to get in the right mood. So, huh? Yes, it is. Unabbreviated, unabbreviated welcome to you all. My name is Kennet. I'm a marine biologist in this house. I like to do some diving, and sometimes do go on these surveys. And one of these surveys, this wasn't one of the worst experiences in my field life. I used to stay in the electron microscopy room at the zoology garden. That was kind of protected. But somehow I get out to sea, and we went to Bali in February now. And then, of course, you think Bali is not that. Well, that sounds not so strenuous, not so dangerous. No. No, not when you're in the line of the mic. Okay? Is that okay? A very nice dive center, actually. And we were actually trying to discover and describe the species diversity of nudibranchs, because there are thousands of species there. I mean, we have 100 here, and out in the Swedish West Coast we have found several new ones, and there are lots and lots. So we were diving there. We had this kind of limited collection permit. And we tried to collect, and we found lots and lots of things. So it was really heavy diving every day for 3 weeks. And it's not without any... The reason is you have such big diversity, so many species, so many undescribed species, because you have a lot of tides bringing in a lot of nutrients. And when you're diving, so that tide can come from very different direction, pushing you up, or pushing you to the side, or sometimes pushing you down. And that is not so nice. We were looking at things like this. They call it the blue dragon, 20 centimeters long. We don't know if it's a species complex or if it's a single species, so we needed to collect. To check this. Some of the species are like icons to go to the dive centers in the Philippines, also in Indonesia, but many of them are not being described. So we kept on diving, and I have a really bad hearing on my left ear because I caught a cold, and many of us caught a cold actually. And you know, do you know what it's like to have a sneeze when you're on 25 meters down, when you have this gear? It's like, and the regulator just cuts out and you have to put it back again. And the other guys just wake up. So what's happening over there? But that was just my roommate, Sven from Germany. Is more like a real dive guide and dive instructor. And he kept on smoking all the time, and he was drinking all the time, but he didn't get any cold. Because he kept going and going and going. And him and I, we were like developing this little game to keep up. It was, he was always singing in the regulator. So we were starting like, after a while, did you recognize what song I was singing? So, no. We can try now. On this dive, you're going to try to find out what I'm singing while we are collecting. Because we're always collecting these animals and bringing up to the other researchers at the lab. So just to get you to, if you imagine the scenery, you're down 25 meters down, it's a muddy slope usually, and lots of nudies. And it could be a bit like this, and it could be hard. Anyone know what that is? No? No? That's Jean Sibelius' the Second Symphony. Okay. No, Sven didn't. I didn't get it. So next dive, his turn. It was like this. You know that one? That was Die Teufel hat die Schnaps gemacht. Udo Jürgens. It's a German Schlager singer. Actually had the world record on being on the charts 60 years in Germany. So I failed. And then you can imagine, like, I tried something that is easier while we are collecting. So I tried this one. Maybe you see what it was? Anyone? And at that time, actually, I saw a blue dragon. So wow, there's the blue dragon, and I want to try to start to get the jars. It's a bit cumbersome. And then suddenly there was a strong down current, a really strong down current. So I lost it. I said, no. And the problem is when you get a down current on a muddy slope, there's nothing to hang on to because you pull your fingers in the slope and then I tried this stick. You always have this stick. It's very handy when you're on some place where fishes are poisonous, so you can point them. You use the stick to stick it down, and you pull yourself up. You slowly drag yourself up to get out of this area with a down current. And Sven was kind of singing. What was it then? It was something like... No? No? You have to be born in the 60s, I think, to know that one. But yeah, I lost him. Oh, and then I had a dive guy from Bali, local guy. And we went up to the boat. And Sven was gone. Some of the other guys came up. After 30 minutes, I mean, I know it's a very experienced diver, but I was a little bit afraid. But then he came up, actually. First Puss stuck his head up and said, "Oh, do you know what song that was?" That was Manfred Mann, Drowning on Dry Land. Cast adrift on an empty sea. So, okay, so happy you're alive. And he had the blue dragon. Yay! So he went back, and actually at that time, they were a little anxious at the dive center because the local other dive centers and the local villagers were actually talking about having a demonstration about bigging these things up. Don't take our nudies, don't take our nudie branks. Because they were afraid that we were picking too many of them. And actually we found over 500 species, maybe 150, 200 of them undescribed. So if you take a few samples of each, it ends up with quite a lot. We had just to immediately start a meeting and talk about this. Actually, there's so many, we won't affect the local populations. Actually, you will benefit from this. So we made this agreement, and we're going to name some of these specimens for them, for the local village. We actually had in mind before, but we didn't tell them. So we had a very good agreement, actually contacted the local universities, and now we're starting up a real big survey. There's going to be a 5-year project with 3 Indonesian universities involved. So it's really going to be a big thing. And then stuff is still involved, so we have to go back. We have to go back. We are forced to go back. to go singing again underwater. Yeah, that's all for me. I'll leave the candle on.
Can you explain real quick what a nudibranch is for everyone? Does everyone know what a nudibranch is? Does anyone not know what a nudibranch is and is brave enough to say it? Okay, good.
If you're a little shell, a little conch in the sea, actually, the nudibranch is a kind of a small shell that lost the shell. Nudibranch means bare gill, actually. And some of them may have lost the gills, but they don't have to make a shell anymore, so they can grow old and big very quickly, and they can mate very quickly. So
they're called sea slugs in English.
Sea slugs is a wider expression, more like some other groups also. If you think it looks like slug. Maybe they do the same things as slugs in your garden. They eat lots of things and help create the dynamics and help create biodiversity in the marine environment. So they're very important, actually.
And they're amazing. If you've never seen one, Google them. Except maybe don't type in nudie. Next up, we have Harith Farooq from the Department of Biological and Environmental Sciences as well.
Thank you.
You gonna do your own timing?
Yeah, I was going
I can give you a behind the ears. Where's your...
It's too tight. This goes... Okay, is this good? Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. So I firmly believe that there are three main kinds of people when they go to do field work. It's okay if you are in the middle, a little bit of the extremes, but it's not okay if you are not in the middle. So starting from the top, you have the mad scientist kind. I work with this guy, so he organized the whole expedition with 15 different scientists, and you'd stay the whole day inside a huge tent. You're just inside this tent taking pictures. We just go on excursions, collecting things, putting inside Ziplocs, and bring him, look, I found this insect, I found this frog, I found this lizard. Like, thank you, thank you, thank you. He packs up all these bags, and he takes pictures all day doing this. At night, he goes to do his own collecting, because he works with this weird kind of grasshopper. So he goes at night, and I was like, okay, so I go, I collect during the day, and I want to join him during the night, so I'll just join him. So we just go, and we do this for a few days, and then he starts to get tired because he's not sleeping enough. But I still have energy. And then I shared my secret. So basically, I took a Red Bull with me for every single day, and every single day I drink a Red Bull. and then I told him, he was like, no, this is bullshit. He's like, no, try it. So I gave him one Red Bull. He had the Red Bull, and then a few days later, I see him leaving this tent where he's always taking pictures, and his face has changed, everything about him has changed, and I asked people, like, what's happening with Peter? I think Peter has an allergy. Allergy, okay. So I go inside the tent where he's always taking pictures, and then I realized that once he tried the Red Bull, he ordered one of the rangers to go to the closest town to bring a lot of Red Bull. So he was just pumping Red Bulls 4 or 5 a day and taking pictures, and at night going collecting, and then his face all changed, just unreal. So this is the mad scientist. You don't want to be like that. And then you have, and then you have the over-prepared researcher. He has a big backpack. He packs everything. He has like a screwdriver, a hammer, a nail, a tent, a spare tent, parts to fix the spare tent, batteries, clothes. He has everything. And he goes up the mountain, and then one thing that they all have, that you can identify an over-prepared researcher by this. They have enough clothes to dress a football team plus their reserves, and they can't have a fork and a spoon in the backpack. They have to bring a spork, plastic. It's just, Last time we were on an expedition, we had one that liked cheese, so he brings cheese. In Africa, on top of a mountain, 40 degrees, he brings cheese. But the cheese will melt, so he doesn't bring just cheeses like this. He brings a metallic box that has vacuum. So he brings that thing inside the backpack over the mountain. It's unbelievable. And then you have the nemesis. The nemesis of the over-prepared researcher is the tough wannabe. The tough wannabe likes to do everything that the over-prepared researcher does, but better and then with less equipment. So if the over-prepared wants to dig a hole, he's going to choose between his 70 different shovels. He goes, okay, this is the best shovel for this kind of sediment. Starts digging, and then the tough wannabe comes with a machete, and he wants to dig a bigger hole. If the task is to bring a log for the fire pit, the over-prepared researcher goes and gets some logs, and the tough wannabe sees it, and goes and gets a bigger log to put in a fire, and then uses a weirder thing to cut the wood and bring an even bigger piece of log. The tough wannabe is the most annoying kind of researcher that you can have. And and it really annoys the over-prepared researcher, because when this guy is going over the mountain, he's carrying a 25-kilo backpack, while this guy is bringing a really small backpack. But this has a drawback. Once you get up, after a few days, you start missing stuff. You didn't bring enough things to the mountain. And then you have to go knock on the over-prepared researcher, like, hey, do you have some spare batteries? Of course he has spare batteries. He brought batteries for the whole town. and then he uses, and that's when the over-prepared researcher goes to sleep at night and thinks, yes, I'm doing a good job. Until someone accidentally puts a snake inside the closed backpack of this one, and you can see the betazation of this stuff flowing away. But anyway, I don't have more time. Those are the three kinds I could find. Do you identify yourself with one of these? Thank you. My name is Harith.
But Harith, this is a mad scientist, okay? And the over-prepared researcher and the tough wannabe. What are you doing over here?
That's not okay.
Sorry. Where should we place things? Where are you? I didn't know what this picture meant when I got it. I've been thinking about it all day. I'm really pleased with the stories. So which one are you?
I think I don't think we are something. I don't think we are something. I think we are a different person to different people. So different people will place me in different places in this triangle.
I would totally bring cheese. Lots of cheese.
All right. Are we killing the video now? It's okay. Okay. All right. Now, yes, you. On to our last speaker, Magnus Lidén, who works at the Botanical Garden. So this is, I didn't say this before, but 3 of our researchers are from the University of Gothenburg, 2 from the Natural History Museum, and Magnus is here representing the Botanical Garden across the tram tracks.
Okay, let's see. Is it okay? The title is missing. I don't know. I call this 5 Little Indians, which is a famous American children's song, I believe. So you have to, it's me and 3 doctoral students from Assam in the darkest corner of India. And we are going up to a mountain top, a little more than 4,000 meters on the border to Burma. No botanists have ever been here. It was quite tough. No path, so just virgin forest. We had and lots of stones and bramble, and some of my companions, they had obviously overestimated what they were capable of. But to start with, it was quite okay. So after about 5 kilometers, we had only lost 1. So when we reached the first real obstacle, which was 30 meters broad, the Fors torrent, so we had to cross, and there was no bridge, of course, but luckily it was a wire spent across the torrent, so only a single wire, so you had to somehow climb over this. It's quite dangerous, in fact, but so there we lost another one. But when we came to the other side, there were then me and the one remaining Assamese doctoral student, and the chief of the village, or the Gaunbura, Tsering, one of his little guys, one of his little kids, and his cousin's son. We call him Superman. He's around 20 years old. Okay, so then next day we spent the night by the river and in the sand, and we had a very nice evening with the Superman. He caught some trouts in the river and shot some forest fowl. So we had an extremely nice dinner. And next day we were to climb up, and after about 1 kilometer or so climbing up, the last one of the Assamese doctoral students had to give up. Very wisely, I think he did it of generosity, because he realized that I can't keep the pace, so I will only slow down the expedition, so we won't reach the top if he joins us. So, and the little kid, the Tsering's son, had to take him back again. Of course, not the same way, because he didn't dare cross the torrent on this wire. So he had to go twice or 3 times the distance back to the village. And he was, well, this little boy, he wasn't kind to him, I can say. So he told him a lot of bad things of how, so it wasn't so nice, but never mind. So there were 3 people left, me and the Gaunbura, Tsering, and Superman. So finally, after a lot of climbing and a lot of scratches and bruises and things, we reached the top, 4,000 meters. And it was about half an hour till sunset. So I ran up to the screes and the alpine meadows, and collected as much as I could during this half hour. And then we went to bed. And in the morning, Tsering and Superman, they said, we have to work. Well, they didn't say, because we had no language in common. They didn't speak any English. I didn't speak any Maor, or Hindi or Assamese or anything that they could speak. So I protested as much as I could, but no, they insisted we have to go back down, because the military didn't allow us more time. We were already 1 day overtime, so to say. So we had to go back. So I spent half an hour in the intended area of investigation, and I found 2 new species of Corydales in half an hour. So, and this is the clue of these what was it? About 2 weeks in total, the trip. So and the last day, going back, it was the worst day of my life. I said, I have never been so exhausted. And I almost died because I tried to, we were crossing a small ravine and there was a log or a branch that was only about 10 meters broad, not more. But when I caught that, it crumbled in my hand, disintegrated completely. So I fell into the ravine, but luckily this was just the first step crossing. But luckily there was a tree growing from the side of the ravine that I managed to fling an arm like that, and Sven picked me up with some difficulty. So I survived, and Sven and Superman and these guys, they belong to a tribe which is very, very small. I think it's only about 1,000 people, the Mayor tribe. But now I named one of the new species after the Mayors, so I hope I gave something back. Yeah, and because, of course, without Sven and Superman, this wouldn't have been possible. I mean, that's generally you are completely dependent on the mountain tribes in order to get things done in the Himalayas. Yeah. So what does this have to do with the picture? Yeah, nothing really. But the thing is that I also on the way down, I dropped my camera, so I don't have any picture from that expedition. Yeah. So yeah. So this is actually from China. This is from an expedition to the border between Yunnan and Tibet. Is around the pass is around 5,000 meters, or a little less, and this is where we slept. So this is a little more organized than the Indian trip, but it was interesting. Also, we had 2 Tibetan guys that accompanied us. In this case, there were actually 3 Swedes going, otherwise I'm usually alone. And we had a little, also I remember we had a little dog accompanying us up the mountain. And it turned up as a dinner the second day. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. I don't know about you, but I do appreciate that they do all this work because I have an ant phobia, so I do not want to collect ants. I do love my cheese, so I would not want to go without that. And I hate heights. I don't like heights, so I don't like climbing mountains. So thank you all for doing this work that is very important. So we haven't talked about like the doomsday, the lack of biodiversity today, but we have lifted the stories behind the research that makes everything possible tonight. And I'm guessing you have questions. I hope you have questions. Does anyone have a question? I have a question for Alison. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because I think you have some stories too, do you? No. I know that you're not. That's what it means. I don't know. If you have a story, you can tell it. We have time. Unless anyone has questions.
I have another story I can tell. Very short.
I have one which I haven't thought. all the way through, but I can, yeah.
Yeah, you can improvise.
Yeah.
So let's give it up for Alison, who just spontaneous story.
See, I thought this was going to be great because I didn't have to talk. But I do have one favorite story, so I'll tell that one because it's been told a few times over. So at the end of my PhD, I went to Central Asia. I had these really cool master's students who knew that I had this sort of Central Asia fascination. And they had applied for a National Geographic grant, which was really cool. And they were like, well, you know, we need to be a little bit more diverse. We're 13 men looking at lizards. So, okay. Well, I know some women who like plants, so we became the other half of the team, made our application a little bit more diverse, and we got this grant, which was really cool. So they went to Tajikistan, and then we met them in Kyrgyzstan. And the whole trip kind of ended up going around this ridiculous vehicle that we had, which was this old Russian military vehicle, which was awesome because you could press plants in it, you could live in it, you could like do pretty much anything but drive in it. That didn't really work. And it went with a driver that could do anything but drive it. So, and he immediately blew his entire salary on cigarettes within the first like 30 minutes of the 3-week trip. Spent the rest of the trip really angry at us for not buying him more cigarettes, even though there was very good communication that this was not how the situation was going to go. So it was a little bit intense, a little bit, he was also Kazakh, and we picked up the car in Uzbekistan and then drove it to Kyrgyzstan, and there's all sorts of confusing things going on in there where the stands don't like each other. So it was tense. And he wasn't super, super happy with us. But one day we're driving along and he's like mad at us and the vehicle's actually going for once. And all of a sudden, the guy sitting in the front, he was looking at snakes and he freaks out. He goes, stop, 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 stop. And we're like, okay. So we stop the vehicle and he and then another one of the herpetologists hop out and they run and they grab this roadkill snake. They're like, oh, yay. And so they take the roadkill snake and they go to the back of the vehicle and they toss it into some of the alcohol that we had brought along, the 97% alcohol. And at this point, the driver kind of realized what was in that jar that he'd been carrying around. But we didn't realize that he had realized what was in that jar that we were carrying around. So that night, we ended up staying in a yurt at the end of the world. There was like no road into this place. I honestly don't know how we got there. It was like 13 kilometers off the road. We were just driving along in the fields. And we kind of stopped where the yurt stopped. There was like, each yurt we stopped and said, hi, is there another yurt? And they said yes, and eventually they said no. And we said, can we stay here? And they said, okay. So we stayed in this yurt. And at about 3 in the morning, it's snowing, which was really weird for the middle of August. It had been beautiful, around about 20 degrees the whole time. All of a sudden, it's snowing. It's actually fairly cozy in the yurt. We were there with all the bed bugs and everything that lives in a yurt. And, but the driver had been really insistent that he didn't want to hang out in the yurt. He wanted to sleep in the car, which we figured was fine because he was snored a lot and made lots of noises and was fairly obnoxious. So we said, you can hang out there if you want. So at about 3 in the morning, he comes tearing into the yurt with the watermelons, which were in the vehicle. And he's freaking out that the watermelons are going to freeze. Oh, okay. So he comes and he runs back and forth about 3 times and he plants the 3 watermelons right next to the fireplace. And we kind of go back to sleep and we wake up in the morning and find snow on the ground and an extremely cold and hungover driver who had been up all night drinking our lab alcohol. And apparently sort of peaked at about the time when he saw all the snow and yeah, decided he was going to save our watermelons because he was feeling very generous to us. So we wake up in the morning, load ourselves back into this van with a very hungover driver, which we realize is our only option to get out because none of us can operate this like Russian military thingamajig, which yeah, somehow is running for a few minutes. So we get in and he's coming up to me and he's like got his cup and he's like, come on, come on. I'm like, no, no, like, we're driving, I'm not giving you more. And so we took off. Driving back down the valley, he won't talk to us. He's angrily yelling us in Kazakh at sort of random intervals. And he was so angry that he ended up driving the entire vehicle into the stream that went down the middle of the valley. It was about +2 degrees. The snow had not melted yet, and we had our vehicle, all of our samples, about this deep in a river that was frozen water. And he looked rather pleased with himself. So we kind of pushed and pulled, and yeah, me and one of the others said, screw this, I can't feel my fingers, I'm gonna go find a yurt. So we walked away to find a yurt to stay warm and let him deal with it. And in the end, we actually had the thing, they had it tied to 2 horses, so two horsepower pulling the vehicle out. And that didn't work, but eventually one of the guys from the yurts hops into the vehicle, looks at it and says, oh, this thing has 4-wheel drive. Kunk. And off we went. So that's one of my favorite stories.
You had something to tell us. Thank you for that focused story, and thank you everyone for coming here. We still have time for questions. I can shut the camera off so you don't have to speak on camera and be on our website.